We're asked to factor all of these. For the first one, I see a trinomial, 1, 2, 3, and then I recognize that half of 4 is 2. So I can use Xbox to factor. Why? It's a trinomial, which basically means you have A, B, and C, and then you look at the exponents, and then half of 4 is 2, so that works. Let me go ahead and try that problem. So A, B, C, remember the ABCs are just numbers. A times C is negative 24, B value is 2. My two numbers are going to be 6 and 4, is that right? And then two numbers that multiply are going to be negative 4 times 6, and they add to be positive 2. Remember, these two numbers will always go down here. And remember what these two are doing. These two are actually splitting 2x squared. So I'm going to have to write 6x squared and negative 4x squared. First one is always going to be 3x to the 4th, and this one's always going to be minus 8. I have terms inside the box. Now I have to get them outside the box. So I realize the only thing they have in common is an x squared. This one looks like they have a 3x squared. And I can multiply, right? 3 times 1 is 3. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. This one looks like it's going to be a negative 4. And over in this direction looks like it's going to be a positive 2. Remember, I can multiply 3x squared times x squared, 3x to the 4th. 3x squared times 2, 6x squared. 4x squared, no, sorry, x squared times negative 4x squared, and negative 4 times 2. My answer is going to be factored, is going to be x squared plus 2, 3x squared minus 4. Raise your hand if you got that. For question number 2, I recognize that, again, I have a trinomial, and I have A, B, and C. And then half of 2, looking at their exponents, half of 2 is what? 1. So that is a 1 right there. So that means I can use my Xbox. Now, because your A value is only equal to 1, you only have to do the x, right? That's the shortcut. Now, if you don't understand that shortcut, just keep using the x in the box and it'll still work. A times C is 36. B value is negative 12. My two numbers are 6 and 6. Negative 6 and 6, multiply to be positive, add to be negative 12. So in my parentheses, I will have my negative 6's there. The class, how many x minus 6's do I have? 2 of them. So you write x minus 6 squared. And this would be your answer. Raise your hand if you got this as your answer. Good. In question number 3, I just need to count the terms. Class, count the terms with me. Ready, set, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can I use Xbox?
Yes.
No, there's 4 terms. So in this problem, we call it just use the box. Right? There is no X. There is no A, B, and C. There is no what we just did in the last 2 problems. So let's go ahead and put it into the box. Remember in the problem, we like to write it like a Z. I believe the quiz you guys did, I think most students did pretty well in this part. X cubed, 2x squared, 7x, and 14. Let me zoom in for you. Now I just need to get things on the outside, so I'm looking for the greatest common factor. That would be an x squared. This looks to be a positive 7, x, and this one looks to be a 2. Again, to check your answer, which I highly recommend, this is where students don't take the time to do that. You have the time. X times x squared is x cubed. X times 7 is 7x. 2 times 7 is 14. And 2 times x squared is 2x squared. So my answer is x plus 2. X squared plus 7. I can't factor these again. So that's my answer for number 3. Question number 4, I count the terms. Class, count the terms. So I have 3 terms. That's called a trinomial. This is your A, B, and C. Now we look at the exponents. Class, what's half of 2? If it is this number here, then you can use Xbox. Now, it is also possible that anyone use chunking. That also works, right? I'm going to use Xbox because it's more universal. I'm sure chunking probably gave you smaller numbers and probably was more efficient. Class, A times C. Negative 7 times 25. Negative 175. My B value is negative 30. 2 numbers that multiply to be negative 175 and add to be negative 30. You got some numbers? I'm going to guess, so we already know it's 7 times 25. And if I add those together, that equals 32. Any other numbers? 35 and what? Double check. 5 extra 2. Eric found the 2 numbers. Negative 35 times 5. That equals negative 175, but adds to be negative 30. Remember, these 2 numbers will always go in the bottom left and top right. And what they're doing is they're splitting the middle term. So class, in order to go from here to here, you have to add a x. Alex, the greatest common factor this way?
5x.
Yep. This way?
5x.
Oscar, this way? Your greatest common factor?
5.
Remember, another way of thinking about it is this times this equals that.
1.
Yeah. And class, this one over here? Negative 7. So 5x plus 1, and then 5x minus 7 is my answer. Raise your hand if you got that as your answer. And question number 5. Alright, question number 5. And if you notice the problems that we just did, there was no greatest common factor. How do you determine greatest common factor again? If I look at it, this is an odd, even, and odd. They have nothing in common. X's, X's, no X's. Nothing in common. Right? if you look at the numbers again, odd, even, even. It's kind of like Niners fan, Chiefs fan, Chiefs fan, right? They're not all Chief fans. This one has an X, this has an X, this has no X, no greatest common factor. No greatest common factor. But look at number 5. Chiefs, Chiefs, Chiefs. They all look like Kansas City Chiefs who won the Super Bowl yesterday, so they're all the same fans. They're all in the same... I guess you can be in the same house with different fans, but sometimes it's more fun to be with just people who are like you. Also, look. Evens. All Niner fans, right? So I can pull out a greatest common factor. I notice they're all evens. I think it's going to be a... so what's my method of factoring? I realize that there is a GCF in this problem. And then after we figure out the GCF, let's do that. 2x to the 4th plus 10x to the 3rd plus 12x squared. Here's one way of figuring out the greatest common factor, or like to break it apart into factors. I'm going to have 2x squared times x squared plus 2x squared times 5x and 2x squared times 6. Try to see what I did there? My greatest common factor is the 2x squared. So 2x squared, and then I write everything that I don't have. X squared plus 5x plus 6. Now, inside the parentheses, I can factor that. I can use my X box. So let's write that. X box. Why am I doing the X box? Because inside the parentheses, it's a trinomial, A, B, C, and then half of 2 is 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and factor it. Inside the parentheses, A times C is 6. I got 5. What are my two numbers, class? 2 and 3. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 plus 3 is 5. So this becomes x plus 2, x plus 3, and then don't forget your greatest common factor. So for question number 5, I took out the greatest common factor, and then I can take the x method to factor the inside of the parentheses, and this is your answer. Oh, we're supposed to graph this one? Alright, let's graph it. So on the quiz, I'm always asking you 3 parts, right? To factor it, this is what factoring looks like, and then now to find the zeros, or identify the zeros. How do you do that? You set it equal to 0. X plus 3 equals 0, x plus 2 equals 0, 2x squared equals 0. For the first one over here, I'm going to divide it by 2, and now I'm left with x squared equals 0. If I take the square root of x squared, 2 identical terms that multiply to be x squared, that is just x, and the square root is 0. 2 identical numbers that multiply to be 0 is 0. I'm going to subtract 2 on both sides. I get x equals negative 2. Subtract 3, x equals negative 3. Let's draw a sketch. I have a 4th degree polynomial here. Okay. So I know it's going to start up, end up. I'm going to put in negative 2. And I also have negative 3. Okay, here's a tricky one. Ready? The reason why I know it's going to shoot through at negative 3 because it has a odd multiplicity. That's the shoot through. Now this 0 here has a even degree multiplicity. That means it's going to kiss at 0. Okay, so let's try to sketch it. Going from left to right to those arrows. These arrows again are our leading our end behaviors. So it should be something like this. Maybe I should make my arrow bigger. So shoot through, then bounce, and kiss off the 0. And again, most of the time it's going to look like a W, so that's what my graph's going to look like. Alright, in question number 6, I recognize that I have 2 terms here. And in my 2 terms, let's just say I wanted to make it a trinomial. I would just have to add a 0x. But class, what is half of 3? 1.5. Does that say 1.5 right there? No, it says a 1. So what do? Well, if I can take the cube root, this was last week's lesson, then basically what I'm doing is the sum and difference of cubes, right? I take the cube root, I get a and b, write down the formula, substitute, and simplify. So if I put in here x, what number goes in here? Cube root of 64. There's my a, there's my b. I'm going to write down the formula now. Remember, this has a minus sign, and then I just use my SOAP. A minus b, because s is same. I need the opposite and always positive. So then I have a squared. What's the opposite of negative? Positive. AB. And then AP stands for what? Always positive. That's my b squared. And then I'm just going to do my substitutions. A is x. My b value is 4. A squared, so that's x. X squared is just x squared. My a is x. B is 4, so that's going to turn into 4x. B is 4, so 4 squared is 16. And all those answers are going to be prime. So you can't factor anymore. So to factor that problem, you have to use the, in this case they call this difference of cubes. And then that would be my answer for number 6.
I love math. You don't love math? What's wrong with you?